So what I'm going to talk now is a story where we worked with a large omni-channel retailer, their merchandising group, in helping them drive growth through a data-driven process. The context here is the online home decor market, which a lot of us know is growing at a very healthy rate and is poised to grow at 15 to 20% over the next 5 years. And our client in this case has identified this as one of the markets they want to target to grow their top line. So as they look at it in a systematic way, the bigger question is obviously, how do I get a bigger share of this growing market? I want to grab as much as possible. But when you break it down, some of the key questions which come to their mind is, okay, what is happening in this market? What are the trending products? What am I carrying? Am I missing out something, right? How competitive I am compared to others who are in the market, right? How am I promoting versus other people? How do I compare on key factors like shipping, installation, many other services which actually customers take into account when they make decisions? So the client was struggling with trying to understand, okay, how do I answer all of these questions as I try to grow in this market? Now, the issue they had is, A, the online market is very dynamic. Like John spoke about and many other people, there are hundreds and thousands of SKUs and they're getting added, and there are so many different retailers, right? So how do you keep a tab of this market? How do you understand what is happening? B, they were not using at this point of time any external data source so that they can systematically look at it on a more regular basis. And the last part of it was largely people dependent. Merchants have a lot of experience, and Fazal spoke about it yesterday. The gut of the person who is doing it for 20 years, 25 years is pretty strong, right? So it's very difficult to go against that gut. But what they were struggling with scaling this process, because each of these category owners will manage their subcategories. They have their point of view. It's very difficult for the management to say whether that's good or bad or how should they go about it. So that's where we came in. We kind of did a pilot for them for 3 categories. We said, okay, let's take this market, let's try to understand it. They had a pretty good internal data. They had sales, transactions, website history, customer history, inventory data, a lot of good things. What we supplemented it was with a lot of external data, or what Sunil was referring to as democratic data, right? What is happening in the market? Who are your competitors? What are they carrying? What price points they are carrying these things are? What are kind of product attributes do they have, right? What are you missing? Not only that, we also help them bring in online content quality. How do you compare to all of these competitors who are out there, right? What are you missing? What are the demand signals? What are people searching? What are people writing in reviews and ratings, right? So we brought all of this data, and then we kind of put this together into a framework, because they needed a systematic process. They cannot like look at it each category differently, right? So we put this framework together, and we started with one pilot category called electric fireplaces. I'm sure a lot of you are coming out of winter. This is something you might have bought this winter, especially in Chicago. We started figuring out, okay, what are the key trending things? So we found that, okay, the TV stand kind of electric fireplaces are the most commonly searched in-demand fireplaces. Within that also we found, okay, there is this mid-range BTU and heating area which seems to be most in demand, right? So once you figure this out, and many other things, including color, the height of the fireplace, the mantle, metal, wood, what kind of fireplace. So we put all of these things together, and we said, okay, now let's look at how are you positioned in this particular category, right? And we figured out many interesting things, starting with traffic. They were doing pretty well on organic traffic, but on paid search, they were lagging the key competitor, right? So we were able to tell them that here is how competition stacks, here is who you are lacking behind in terms of paid search. Then we looked at into many factors like pricing and assortment, and what we found was they were focusing on the entry and value segment, which was good because that was the dominant segment in this market, but they were lagging behind in the premium segment. They were underperforming, conversion was low, and one of the key reasons was that they were not price competitive actually in that segment. Then we went into, okay, what is happening in the trending products? We found that they are not carrying 22 trending products, which is good. They had a SKU base of 100, 150. They were missing 22, which is fine. But the bigger problem was on the trending products they were carrying, on 46% of them, they were not price competitive. So they were losing the price war on 46% of the trending products. And then we found many other things, like, for example, if you see, white is the most searched color, and they didn't have enough inventory for white. So that could have been one of the factors, right? We dug deeper, and we started to understand what are some other strategies they can say, like private label, right? Where they could potentially add private label. How is their private label compared to other private label? How is it priced and things like that? And we found that there is opportunity actually for them to add some private label in the premium segment. And by the way, the productivity on their private label was much better than their national brands. So they could get much more margin and sales by investing in private label. The other interesting things which we found was on shipping and actually customer feedback. So shipping, when we actually mapped all the various options they had with all their 5 or 6 key competitors, we found that they're actually losing both on cost and speed. They are not offering free delivery as much as other competitors are offering. And even when they offer free delivery, the time it takes is much more. So they were losing both on speed and cost in terms of delivery. Now, this was not as surprising. They knew some of this, but what actually really surprised them was the customer feedback on installation time. So we went through all those reviews and rating and what Brendan spoke about, text analytics, right? And we figured out that actually the installation time for our client is on an average 2 hours more than competitors. And they were really complaining about it. To Vic's point, there were actually things on manual instructions, how things are not well written in the instructions, how they're missing parts and things like that, right? So though there was all this content and all of those things, when people were actually trying to use it, they were not able to use it. And finally, we brought all of this together in form of our framework where we suggested actionable insights in each of those segments we saw in the framework, which translated into very specific actions like, okay, rationalize this low-selling assortment of Cambridge kind of brand, or build new brand relationships. They didn't have good brand relationships with certain brands which were doing really well in the market, right? Or consider reducing price on certain kind of brands they were carrying, which was not very competitive. And then we also gave some recommendations, especially for their private label development, where they could focus on attributes like color, the type of fireplaces, or the BTU range where they could add more, which was missing. And then so on and so forth in terms of what they could do to premium segment and some of those things. Finally, we did 3 categories as a pilot, and what we realized that, and again, this is an estimated impact because some of these decisions take time to play out in the market, but we said, okay, you could easily add 5 to 10% to your top line if you take some of these actions. They're pretty happy with this framework. We are actually developing an ROI dashboard where all the actions we take over the next 1 year, we are going to actually track so that we can go back and say, this is the actual ROI you actually got from all of this stuff, right? So now this is scaled to 30 plus categories. We are going to cover the entire home decor market over the next 6 months. Now, some of you here obviously are in an omni-channel environment. You're not just online. And you could say that, okay, it's great. There are these 25 SKUs, but I cannot add all of them. I don't have enough space on my aisles to add all of these things. Well, the good news is 33% of the worst SKUs actually add no value to your assortment. This is the research we have done, figured out from various data sources that, in fact, the 25% of the worst SKUs are actually eating into your margin today, especially in a store environment. So there is a lot of scope for us to optimize this assortment. As we figure out new things to add, there's a lot of scope to actually remove things. And what we need to do there is actually not just look at a assortment intelligence, but actually an assortment optimization solution, where we not just consider things like internal demand and external demand, but also start understanding, okay, what is the product affinity? What is the basket in which people are buying? What drives people to buy things together? Or what is the impact of new products? You launch all of these new styles of private label. What should you remove? It doesn't mean that you keep adding stuff. You have to remove some stuff, right? What is the attribute performance? How much does actually white color matter? Is it the key thing? Or I need to focus on 2 or 3 different attributes as I add products to my assortment. And last but not the least, what is the demand transference? As you drop some of these products, how much of that demand transfers to another product in the same assortment? Or actually people say, oh, these guys are not carrying this product, I'm going to go to another retailer, right? So both of those things you need to understand, and that's where we kind of bring all of this together in our assortment optimization tool. And in fact, today afternoon, Naveen is going to talk about little bit as to how we brought all of this together and toolified it for a client to take it forward.